think the most touching question is, why did the war start?
Welcome to Landlords and Tenants, What to Know and How to Win, with your host, attorney Niv Davidovich. In the Landlords and Tenants podcast, you'll learn from property owners as they share their experiences, aimed to help shape and educate people's practices. What has worked, what has not worked. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, davidovichtlaw.com. Now here's the host of Landlords and Tenants, Niv Davidovich.
What is going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in again. This is Niv Davidovich. Welcome to episode 5 of our new podcast entitled Landlords and Tenants, What to Know and How to Win. I guess we're on episode 5, so it's not that new anymore. But anyway, I'm hoping to provide our audience with helpful tips, insightful war stories, updates on the law, and most importantly, some unique perspectives on the real estate industry, landlord-tenant relationships, and I hope some entertaining stories which should dissuade you that whatever your real estate nightmare happens to be, trust me, somebody has it worse. Today, my guest is a great client and one of the most fascinating people in the business that I know. This is Kyle Kazan of Beachfront Property Management. It's hard to summarize everything Kyle has done and is doing, but I'm going to try. Kyle was or is currently a special ed teacher, a police officer, a real estate investor on 3 continents, venture capital manager, CEO of Beachfront Property Management, a very highly successful real estate management company, and CEO of Glass House Brands, a publicly traded, vertically integrated cannabis and hemp company, and an outspoken speaker and advocate for the legalization of marijuana and against the war on drugs. Kyle, everyone wants to know, when do you sleep?
Niv, thanks for having me on the show. Well, if it was now, it's being interrupted in a fun way because I always enjoy having our lively discussions about real estate.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's very exciting to have you here. So usually I always ask this first question. It's my favorite one, which is, how's your story? What's your story? How did you get into real estate?
Wow, that is such a good question. The one thing that my favorite story about that is I had just graduated from the University of Southern California. I had ambitions to be an NBA player. 3 of the 6 guards on my senior year team actually went to the NBA, including one who was drafted by the Lakers. Wow. So I was so close to the sun and just didn't quite hit. So I found myself needing a job and didn't know what to do. So I became a teacher. I found I could make hazard pay by going to South Central. I became a special ed teacher right by the Jordan Downs housing projects. And my favorite story about entering real estate would be, it could be sort of depressing around that time, 91, the Rodney King riots were 92, April of 92, right around there. So somewhere in 91, I noticed there was a woman named Mrs. Beach. She was an older Black woman. She drove a 450 SL. Many of your listeners probably remember that beautiful little Mercedes. And she drove it into South Central every single day. And she had a bounce to her step. She was a fantastic teacher and just a warm personality always. And one day I see her walking along and I said, Mrs. Beach, how are you so happy every day? Is there a pill that you can recommend or give me? She said, Kyle, come on into my class. I want to talk to you. So like many of her 3rd grade students, I trudged on in, only I was alone with her before the class started. And I said, what is it? What's the secret? And she said, my husband was a postman, retired last year. I'm retiring at the end of this school year. We put both of our kids through school. We own 10 houses, free and clear in South Central Los Angeles. And we're going to travel the rest of our lives. You need to buy some real estate, Kyle. And literally, I then took a seminar on foreclosures and trustee sales. It was that conversation that got me into real estate. I never thought I'd be where I am, but it all started with Mrs. Beach in South Central Los Angeles.
Wow. And so after you took those seminars, you started buying?
It was one of those things where I like to learn for daily improvement. I'm always trying to figure things out, and I'm also a nothing ventured, nothing gained guy. So um, there was a woman named Cleo Katz. She put on this seminar. I was absolutely fascinated by it. And obviously technology and things have changed, but the basics are the same. When notice the default, things like that. And so it inspired me to get into it, and I was able to find distress, not the way she did it, but the early 90s, mid 90s were not such good times to be an owner of real estate. It was a perfect time to be a buyer, especially a young entrepreneur with his then girlfriend, now wife, Diane. And we just pooled our money and we lived like paupers to just save every penny we could and put it into distressed real estate.
Wow. And then I know you eventually started buying real estate in Germany and China. How do you even get involved in the real estate industry in China?
So what I would say to anybody that's listening that doesn't own any real estate, I would say start local. That's the easiest. Covet what you know. And if you really love this business, because you have to love it, as I'm sure we're going to get into, it's a kick in the nuts almost every single day in Southern California. But what happened was, after I started making money for investors and things like that, I say no to so many things. I mean, that's probably my number one word is just no. That deal doesn't work. No, I don't want to do that. But sometimes saying yes and taking a look at situations works. One of the things I said no to that I was very interested was I was in Kiev and I was like, I could buy some of these units here. That happened to be a fateful no.
Right.
But China, after we'd already bought around, outside of it used to be a bike ride from my house, my business partner's house. Then it was an hour drive. Then it was an hour flight. And it was a few hour flight. And then by then it was like, okay, what would it look like in a different country, the different currency? When you're in the PRC, how does that work? What do the property owner laws look like? So there's always a lot, but the thing I would say is if you're going to leave what you know, once you cover what you know, and it's Southern California or city of Los Angeles, which Niv, you're an expert on all the intricacies of that landlord tenant law. I mean, it backwards and forwards. That in itself, you really have to know. Now, if you go to Anaheim, it's going to be different. If you go to Las Vegas, now you're in Nevada. How does that work? You really have to understand. If you cover what you know, you can become an expert very quickly in your area. Right. Once you go somewhere else, don't think because I'm an expert in Southern California that I can go to Phoenix and go, man, this is like a suburb of California, because that's a good way where Californians, get their heads cut off. And the same thing, you go internationally, it ratchets it up. More taxes, currency, all that kind of stuff. So, but there's good lawyers like you that know that those kind of questions in China and in Germany, and we found them, and we were very fortunate. And I'm humbled to say I have not had any real big losses ever. I've been able to just be very conservative, and I'm sort of like the little gopher that pops his head out, and I will poke my head back if it doesn't make sense, like in Kiev.
Right. So thank you for that. Now, I know that Beachfront manages all over Southern California. You have very large owners, you have small mom and pop landlords, and I think it goes without saying, a lot of people are getting very fed up with the entire state and specifically Southern California because of the consistently abusive regulatory environment. Are your clients still buying in California? Are they shying away? Are they keeping properties or selling to go out of state?
Yes. So Niv, I would say that some of my broker friends, one in particular, he sells a lot of stuff in LA, and I recently went to dinner with them, and we're partnered on a Bank of America building in Redondo. So I've known him for a long time. Like anything else, this is a relationship. Every business is relationships. And I sat down with him, and I haven't had my little shot of tequila yet, and he's already looks like he's ready to jump off a building. And I go, what is going on? He's like, well, so many of my clients are talking about they're so frustrated, they want to get out, and I built this business and the relationships. And I said, hey man, Relax. Will some clients sell? Absolutely. Will they cash in or 1031 outside of either City of Los Angeles, unincorporated county, Santa Ana, and go towards something else in Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, whatever? Or will they actually take it to Las Vegas or Tennessee or somewhere else? Absolutely. But someone's got to buy those buildings. Someone will try. There's a value to all these buildings, and you'll make new relationships, and you're going to maintain your old relationships. So actually, if you're a broker, this might be a good thing. So, but I would tell you, I have some that one of my friends owns about 4,500 units in Southern California only, and he just does not want, he's in his early 70s and says, no, this is what I know, and I believe we'll get through it. And I have a lot of buildings paid for in cash and and I have others that are just, fed up. One large property management owner last year traded all of his City of LA product and moved it to Miami. So I'm seeing all of it. Every perspective makes sense to me for that person. And so, do I think that owning out of state makes sense? Sure. Do I think that, the equity value of particularly City of Los Angeles properties and unincorporated County of Los Angeles properties are under threat? 100%. And I think it's always good to educate yourself, talk to people like yourself, Niv, and understand what the laws look like. What does an eviction look like? Before you bought the City of LA, if you didn't, buy an hour or two of your time and take you out for a cup of coffee, you'd be stupid.
Thank you. There actually are people who do that, and then when they say what should we do, I just tell them go buy somewhere else.
Yeah, or you get a good enough deal, and you take your chance, and you just understand, hey, this is how an eviction works. This is how it goes, and understand. I believe in the pendulum as someone I think I bought my first investment property in 1991, so I've been at this for 3 decades. And look, the worst of New York City, you could have bought stuff for a song if you timed it right, and survived the 70s, and then bought, you'd have absolutely killed it. Right. The same thing will probably happen here because they just don't learn from history. And right now there's a housing crisis, and it's being blamed on the landlords are being blamed for the homeless crisis and the housing crisis, which is generations of bad policy that continues. NIMBYism, all those kind of things.
My only concern is that I don't really see it getting less crazy. I see more and more crazy people ending up on the council, and a lot more, crazy supervisors in the county. And it seems like it's going to get worse before it gets better.
I would tell you that that's the exact pattern I'm seeing, and I've spent some time with some of our politicians, and I scratch my head at the logic and some of the tribalism here that just doesn't make any sense to me. I've been a registered libertarian my whole life, so I don't find myself, I didn't vote for Trump, I didn't vote for Biden, I didn't vote for Hillary. So I like to think of myself as pretty open to staying away from the dogma of both the Democrats and Republicans. And I would tell you, though, when you're actually sitting down and talking, having a cup of coffee, they're not understanding the unintended consequences of their actions. Let me put it that way. And as a business person who runs, I think I have over 1,000 employees between the two companies that you mentioned. And I also am an owner in an insurance brokerage firm. And I can tell you, I'm seeing things that I never thought I'd see. And I plan on spending some time with Ricardo Lara, our insurance commissioner, to understand how he's dealing with a crisis that I've never seen and could really spiral worse if there's not proper planning. And I'm open to the conversation. And I can't wait to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, I know. And in terms of the insurance, my clients are saying the same thing. I figured what was going to happen was they're going to do the same thing as they did with earthquake insurance, where the state was going to provide insurance. Well, they started doing that, but it's only for fire. They didn't provide any liability insurance.
How about habitability, which is the biggest thing we're seeing right now? Just we're all getting hammered with it.
Yeah, everybody's getting hammered with it. And I think what used to happen was my clients would just send it directly to insurance and say, that's what we have insurance for. I'm not going to pay for my own attorney to handle this. And sometimes, and nowadays, they're so scared of losing the insurance, they're handing it to me anyway.
Which even if I hand it to insurance, I would say, go to your trusted counsel. Go to Niv and say, Niv, I need you, look, I don't want to pay double, but I'd like you to monitor just to make sure my interests are being taken care of and that they're not pushing the claim outside my coverage, because that can happen. Shameless plug, but also something I would tell you is, if you have State Farm, do not wait until they cancel your policy. It's coming. They told you it's going to happen.
Right.
The company that I'm an owner of, I'm not the sole owner by any means, but it's NEU Insurance. Mm-hmm. And a woman named Maureen Hahn. And so we have set up a policy, I think it's with CIG, that if we manage the building, we're able to get insurance, even on some stuff that's harder to insure. Sometimes it's costing an electrical upgrade. Sometimes it's costing a plumbing upgrade or something like that. But if you actually pencil it out and the insurance savings is worth it, you might as well do it, as opposed to paying a far lesser carrier. You can, in that same 3-year period, you'd have an upgraded plumbing system or an upgraded electrical system, and you may not have much of a choice. And if you decide to sell, it's going to get deducted off the price anyway. So that's something that, and the woman's name is Maureen Hahn. She knows this stuff backwards and forwards. And what I love about her is she'll give you the straight scoop like you do, Niv. Like, you don't hesitate to tell you got a bad situation here, Kyle. Like, this is a toughie. This is what I recommend. And that's what I need. I don't need someone to try and make me feel good. I own properties in the city of Los Angeles. There's plenty of days I don't feel good.
Right. Yeah, I know. I definitely understand you on that. Well, let's talk about that for a second. I know that one of the biggest parts of my job is to get a landlord out of an understandably emotional response to a tenant situation and into a logical, numbers-based sandbox. So it's really the only way that you can make good decisions. Do you have that challenge, and what are the steps that you take to go about it?
Hell yes. Hell yes, I do. And also, I have the muscle memory of years when that didn't happen, where I can be now, I guess, turned into the old man of, in my day, you didn't have to do that. You just give a 30-day notice if somebody was tormenting the entire building.
Right.
Today, you can't do that. So you can have the conundrum of somebody tormenting the entire building, disturbing the quiet enjoyment that you're legally regulated to offer to all your residents, and you can't get rid of this person very easily, because so you're in a legal catch-22. The thing that I would tell you is, I used to have a red line that I would not settle a case with anybody on a resident unless, if the person owed us money and we were forgiving, I wanted eviction on their record.
Right.
I wanted to put the scarlet letter on them so this way, if that was a tenant that just was way out of bounds, the next property owner should know about it. Today, I can't offer that advice to our clients, because you're going to have you're going to end up with a jury trial, and you're going to spend $10,000 to $20,000 on an eviction that you may lose. And so, but I'm still pretty cantankerous. Most of my properties are in strong financial condition, and so a lot of times I'll take it to the courthouse steps of the trial. Meaning, I'll go right to the door of the courtroom to say, let's go. And if I have a good case, but that's where I need my lawyer to tell me, here are the holes in your case. Here's or hey, you've got all the video and the photos, and you've got nothing to worry about. But more and more, what I would tell you is, the word of the wise is, to the best of my ability, I try, if I am settling something, that I'm going to settle all claims as they leave. Meaning, I don't want to get BASTA or Eviction Defense Network to refer it to their buddies that are going to go ahead and sue you for habitability when they've never even looked at your building, knowing that an insurance company is going to settle for 6 figures, which they often do now, even if they have no case. So I want a full and complete bye-bye if I'm walking away from money, and also the scarlet letter. And I'm hoping at some point, that we as property owners find a way to do a Yelp of our own, even if it's a private Yelp or a private Dun & Bradstreet, where we can basically share what happened with that resident last time. And we manage almost 14,000 units. We manage almost 850,000 square feet of commercial. You get enough of those folks, and it takes a little bit of time to get that flywheel going. And within a few years, we'll actually have those residents that we want to avoid, and that the state has made so difficult to track when you run a UD.
Right.
And so a number of my big clients and a number of my friends that manage their own stuff or other management companies, we all agree we just need to bring it together. So Niv and anybody out there, that young tech entrepreneur that wants to do something, I'm sure Niv can advise how we could do this or not do this.
Well, it's just a list of people you have an opinion about that might not be good business decisions. And actually, a lot of other people have had that idea. There's a group that I'm involved in, and they're actually putting together a sort of tenant list that's not necessarily like a subscription with a website, but I think eventually it will turn into that.
So I'm wide open. I've got lots of data myself. The question is, if Fair Housing knocks on your door and says, "Why didn't you rent to this person?" and you say, "Well, I belong to this club, and they said that." So that's my worry, is got to be on pretty firm legal that you can say the reason I didn't was because of this, and I can count on this information being factual because. So there's a little bit of a what happens in worst case scenarios when the feds show up to knock on your door, and since, as you know, the more you manage, the more likely that's going to happen to you. So but I think the technology's out there.
Yeah.
And there's enough of us owners here in California that would like to know who are the ones that are the A+ and who are the ones that, you don't want to let in the restaurant because they dine and dash.
The thing is that a lot of people don't understand, while it's very easy to get in trouble, and that's why I have my, just don't say anything policy. Fundamentally, there are a lot of reasons that you are allowed to say no to a person. I think a lot of landlords get confused and frustrated because they say, well, at this point, I just have to let anyone in who applies and has a pulse. And it's simply not true. You're pretty much allowed to say no for any legitimate business reason. Yes, there's the new rules about Section 8. You can't check their credit if they give you verification of income. Okay, fine. Those are Section 8 people. For everyone else, if you have a legitimate business reason, if you are not arbitrarily discriminating, right, and someone having a UD is a legitimate business reason, someone having a bad history with prior landlords who's causing trouble is a legitimate business reason, you're allowed to say no to those people. And in fact, like you intimated, you have an obligation to the other tenants in the building to make sure that that person doesn't come in and ruin their quiet enjoyment. And
let me throw you a curveball that it's going to put you in a quandary, Niv. How about this? Okay. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
What if I said I will no longer rent to attorneys?
That's actually a very good question. I've actually dealt with this. Actually, I know the answer. So saying that out loud and actually doing that would not be legal. Because while there's a list of the people who are protected classes, that goes under the FHA. But then on top of that, you're not allowed to arbitrarily discriminate under the UNRU Act. That's Civil Code 51, right? So we actually dealt with that with one of my landlords who said, I don't want to rent to attorneys anymore. And for good reason. Attorneys are the biggest pain in the ass tenants, right? So you can't say it out loud. But happens to be in the back of your mind somewhere, we don't know about it, just don't say it out loud, and then find a different reason to say no to it.
So what about if I run a Nexus Lexus and I see they've been a plaintiff in a lawsuit?
Depending on what kind of lawsuit it is, again, if someone is
against any property owner, there
they might say that you're discriminating against someone for advocating for their rights And so that could be an arbitrarily discriminatory practice. But again, whenever you have a person that's got those kinds of issues, I tend to find that they always have some other kind of issue as well. They don't almost ever have one issue, right? And that attorney who applies usually is going through the lease and trying to make you make changes to your form lease. Just say no. That person's like, no, I gave you a form lease. You made an edit. That's basically saying no to my offer. You said no, we have no contract. Done. I'm not discriminating against you. You just didn't take the offer I gave you.
I had to throw it out. I will tell you, it's one of those things where there's a sea of gray. And I'll tell you, back 15, 20 years ago, we had somebody that got in to our building, said no, they were not a sex offender. Turns out we missed it, and we weren't at the time checking the Megan's Law. So we were surprised. Garden style 40-unit building, plopped right in front of the pool on the second story, and the person was a sex offender for like rape of a minor, like some pretty egregious situation. And I said, I want to get rid of this person. This was before I met you. My lawyer at the time says, you can't just do that. You can't get rid of them because of that. And I looked at it and I said, and you may differ, but that was the advice I was given. And I said, I've got two choices here. I could be sued by a sex offender for booting that person out and judged by 12 people over that. Or I could worry that I would lose money in that. This person goes back to their bad impulse, hurts a child, then I get sued, and 12 people judge me for not getting rid of that person who did the egregious act because I was scared of losing money. And I said, that's not if I got to choose to be judged, I'll be judged for booting out the sex offender because there's going to be at least a couple of parents on there that will get it. That was how I looked at it. We actually talked to the person, said, hey, the pitchforks are about to come. We found out from the tenants they're not happy. How can we help you move quickly? And that happened. But again, when you're in this business, a lot of times it's not so black and white. You'll tell me, Kyle, here's the way I'm laying it out here. What do you want to do? And then you just make your best decision. Yeah.
And that's the exact analysis I give whenever we have people who are in that kind of a situation. Is the former lawsuit is a lot better than the latter, and it's a lot cheaper.
I would imagine. And also, I just figured I know I would get sued if somebody that I knew had a bad history was at my building. I did nothing, and they did something. It would be a devastating lawsuit, and I'd probably vote guilty on myself.
100%.
Yeah, so I looked at it, and also, it helps. I was a school teacher. I'm a parent. I was a police officer. I care about protecting the community. And that was the wrong place for that person, given their history, to be living.
Yeah, we just had another fun case.
I'm going to guess it's not so fun, but go ahead.
It was interesting. Let's just say that.
Please.
Yeah, so the landlord calls us and says, well, we've gotten reports that this one couple that rented this penthouse is filming pornography in the stairwell. And then posting it on their Twitter, right? Usually some of my associates handle the 3-day notices. I couldn't assign that to anyone without getting into trouble for employment law. I had to do it myself, right?
Wow, I didn't even think of that. And to me, being the landlord that I am, I'm like, well, couldn't you cordon it off and just rent the stairway? Because that's income I didn't get. And I'll just put that under laundry and porn, like the porn income.
No, this I think this was just for promotion materials for her other work. But they really did that. And then it turns out that they had been doing it on like the balconies, and people in a building across the street could see. And when I say people, I mean their children, right? So there were prior complaints.
Yeah.
And this is the best part. When I call the tenant attorney, they're like, hey, give him a break, whatever. I'm like, no, you're having sex in public in a private place. There's studios for this. Go do that there. They're like, everyone has sex in public. I'm like, no, we don't. No, really, we don't. This is
Not
not
after,
okay behavior.
not after college.
Right. This is not okay behavior.
It's
Thankfully,
not okay.
they also left within 10 days. We didn't even have to file. So, but yeah, people do crazy, crazy stuff. And as the landlords and as the attorneys for the landlords, you're obligated to protect the other tenants. And a lot of the times, even when the eviction isn't 100%, but you know that the other tenants are complaining, filing the eviction, whether you win or lose, is your insurance policy against the other tenants making their negligence claim. Because if they make their negligence claim and say, you didn't do enough to try and get this tenant out, you could say, here's my notice, here's my complaint, here are the bills I paid. I'm sorry if a jury of your peers decided against me, but I did everything I could. So that complaint, whether you win or lose, is your defense. So that's why it's important to do.
100%. And like any business, this one, I love the war stories. I love that war story. And when you get together with people that have been in this business, as you get pretty jaded. If you've been doing this long enough and you have enough units. I mean, I could tell you about homicides we've had, suicides, threats. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. But it's just one of those things where this is where people live. And also counterintuitively, the days where you want to be off because it's a high holiday or it's, whatever, the days that are off where people are not working become our busiest days because that's when they're using their stoves. That's when they're overdoing the plumbing at the building because everybody's home. So Think Christmas, think, Easter, think Memorial Day. So my folks need to work harder on the days that everybody else is off. And so that's where my phone needs to be on all the time, just to help triage any major issues that are coming down the pike.
Yeah. So speaking of your people, we work with a lot of your staff. They're really, really awesome, very professional. I noticed a lot of them are actually very adept at getting buyouts done quickly for very good prices and attractive move out terms. Do you train them, or is there some method that you get them to use to get these really great results for your clients?
So, look, I'm merely the pretty face of the company. I am very lucky to have a really smart staff. And what we find is there are some people that are really good at certain things. Like when it comes to getting buyouts, I would tell you what they're very good at is talking to different residents and understanding the objective of the resident. And like any negotiation, whether, if you're calling me, hey, I'd like to buy your building, the best thing to do is try to find out what it is I'm looking for and show me how to get it.
Right.
And I think that's the technique. And we have folks that speak fluent Spanish so they can sit down, they understand the cultural. And as you have to be very, very careful. There's no gun to anybody's head. You're just trying to find, is there a good pathway here for the resident? And I would tell you, there's a lot of landmines we could be stepping in if it weren't for my team out there that sit down when a roof caves in or tenants misbehaving. That I know of, we haven't had someone having sex on the balconies. But when those happen, the conversations need to happen in the living room. And most lawsuits get avoided by having those conversations. And also, I would tell my cheapest owners that and if you're in real estate, you're naturally cheap like me. But sometimes don't let the alligator arms get in the way of just settling something quickly. Like put somebody in a hotel. And I'll give you a quick war story. And I'll bet you every large owner you have, every small owner that's owned for a while knows when you have a flat roof, you get 10 to 15 years out of it. So I knew I was at the end of the line on a 54-unit building that I've owned forever. And my team was telling me, Kyle, you got your roof shot. And so me being my alligator arm self sometimes, I go, it's September. I bet you we could get to next summer. Wrong. And when two roofs caved in on a particularly rainy winter, and then I get the phone call that they're looking at air that's water coming in and damages everywhere, I realized I screwed that up. It's all on me. put those people in hotels, treat them very well, get ready to pay for some damages if they don't have renter's insurance, and stave off a bigger insurance claim than I might already have. I might not have even turned in the roof claim because I think ultimately we're able to resolve it and then put a new roof. I don't remember on that part, but I know we took care of those tenants big time right away. And that's today from where we were when I started, and I started the management company in 99. It's night and day different. You've got to be tenant friendly if you want to be in this business in Southern California. If you are not taking care of your customer, if you're not prepared to do that, the days of slumlording it, hey, I'll keep your rent a little bit low, don't call, stand by. Your first eviction, you're done. You're done.
Right.
You're going to get hit in the eviction. You're going to have an eviction defense network or a BASTA. They're going to crawl up your ass. They're going to win. And then they're going to refer you to their pal for a little cut. And you're going to get hit on a HAB and you won't have insurance. That's your, so if that's what you want to do in Southern California, I tell you, go buy commercial, go buy a retail, go buy office, industrial, get out of residential housing. And it's going to get worse, as you mentioned earlier in this podcast.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem with residential. That is why I tell a lot of people that commercial is great, because in commercial, number one, you're still the king. You could set virtually any terms you'd like. And legally, what people don't understand is that in California, there is a state California law, that says local entities are prohibited from enacting any local commercial rent control. And that pretty much includes commercial eviction control. The only way that the local entities were able to do that during COVID is because that law was temporarily suspended by the governor. When he put it back, everything went back to normal. And no one who's going to run for the state assembly or a statewide office or the state senate is going to win a seat by trying to advocate for commercial tenants, small business owners.
That's right.
Unfortunately, nobody cares about small business owners. I'm a small business owner, and I can say that nobody gives a crap about this, right?
I would tell you right now, it's hard to run a small business in the state of California. And as someone who has real estate in other states, other countries, I've sold my stuff in China and Germany, but this is a very difficult place to do business. The weather's great. The lifestyle in so many areas is great. But government looks at small business as the enemy, and that we're all just trying to get our claws and get rich and stuff like that on the backs of people. And I think that's just unfortunate that most of those folks have never run a business. They've never had to make a payroll. So they don't know the stress of it. And I've told a number of folks, I said, what you're going to get is more and more offshoring. You're going to get more and more AI, and you're going to push people to move faster on all of that than they otherwise would have. And but there's just a lack of, I think, understanding. All that said, I was born and raised here in Southern California, went to college here, went to grad school here. I love Southern California, and I'm hoping that the pendulum starts swinging, and without getting too political, one of the biggest things we need to cure is we need to get rid of our district attorney, George Gascon.
Oh, yeah.
That one I'm unabashedly political. I've given money to Mr. Hochman. Jackie Lacey, who is a Democrat, was a very good DA, has just endorsed Mr. Hochman. The first thing we do is start prosecuting property crimes and crimes persons. That because too often now, especially in the city of Los Angeles and even the city of Long Beach, there's not enough police officers out here, and they're scared of the DA because they feel that the DA wants to prosecute them more than the criminals. So I would tell you that's the first step in stabilizing Southern or Los Angeles County is getting rid of George Gascon. He is a disaster.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. And I think that'll definitely improve things if we can get rid of him.
It's going to be highly likely as long as we stay vigilant. And I'm going to be hosting a fundraiser. So if you feel like coming out and meeting me at my home and having some nice hors d'oeuvres and meeting Mr. Hochman, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty out on the west side and around LA. But yeah, most cities are done with him. And every police officer I know is saying he's a danger to society. So, other people we can debate, but when it comes to that, nobody wants to see their loved ones put it more at risk. And I would tell you, we are all more at risk. You, your children, your parents, your siblings, anybody here in Los Angeles County is more at risk with that man there, because criminals are smart and they know when consequences change, their risk profile changes, just like ours do when we're buying an apartment complex. So we don't want to see enough. I saw when 3 strikes, you're out came in, and that was because of bad policy and people getting fed up. And too many killings, too many this, too many that. So I won't get off my soapbox on that one, but I would tell you to me, the pendulum will start swinging back the other way.
100%. Well, thank you so much, Kyle, for coming on the show. This was fascinating and a really fun conversation as always. Thank you to everybody for tuning into this 5th episode of Landlords and Tenants. I hope you had as much fun as we did, and tune into our next episode, which will be coming soon. If you have any questions about landlord-tenant issues, real estate, or construction matters, please feel free to reach out to me. Our number is 818-661-2420, or email me at niv@davidovichlaw.com. Thanks so much, and see you again soon.
But I think the most touching question is, why did the war stop?
You've been tuning into Landlords and Tenants with your host, Niv Davidovich. You can find the show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, davidovichlaw.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.